Hi, today we're going to make some rye sourdough starter. This is the basis for our common loaf, but it's also used in many of the sourdough breads we make in Rye. We're going to use beautiful wholemeal organic stone ground rye flour and then just some ordinary regular tap water. So to make our starter, we're going to bring together just 25 grams of the rye flour. Just going to measure that off on a digital scales. Just measure that in there. And these measurements that I'm using here today are to bring us up so that we'll have enough flour to make, or enough starter to make our common loaf at the end, and also enough to keep in your fridge till the next time you bake any of the loaves. As you see, we're also weighing off the water. This is a much more accurate way of combining both their ingredients. So you just bring that together, mixing that. And we're using rye flour because it ferments so easily. There is none of this having to catch the wild yeasts as they fly past, none of that. The organic, the bacteria and yeast are already on the flour. All you have to do is bring these together. And we're just going to cover these and leave this in a warm place. During the summertime, I've just been leaving these in the kitchen and it'll ferment because they're around 21 degrees. But as I found now, we're moving into winter, the place is becoming much colder. So we're going to leave this in the hot press. It likes to ferment somewhere between 21 and 25 degrees. I'm going to leave it here for 2 days. I'm going to come back and we're going to refresh it with another 50 grams of our rye flour, another 50 grams of water. And we're going to build this up over a week. At the end of our week, we're going to make our common loaf. We've got our starter here again. This is after it's been in the hot press for 2 days. And this will have been fermenting away in there. So I'm just going to show you here. If we break it open, we can see the gaps that are starting, the air pockets that have come out. And this is where we can see the fermentation. And it's very important to notice this, to make sure that it's been at the right temperature and that it is fermenting away. So to this, we're going to add 50 grams of flour and 50 grams of water. So we basically have a third starter, a third flour, and a third water. And these proportions will bring up a really good starter for you. So just, again, we're taking our organic wholemeal rye flour, adding 50 grams of that. And another 50 grams of water. And we're just going to combine all these again with your fingers. Should be a fairly stiff paste, not too wet. And just trying to get rid of any dry pieces because it needs to be in contact with the water for it to ferment. And here you have this nice stiff paste again. And so the bacteria that are in there, they're being refreshed with more bacteria, but there's also lots of nice food for them to feed on so they can start multiplying and fermenting. Just going to put a lid, and we're going to put this back in our hot press, and we're going to leave it there just for 1 day this time because it's already started going. And in 24 hours, we'll come back and we'll refresh it again. So we'll come back to this tomorrow. Here we are at day 4 of building our rye sourdough starter. So our starter has been fermenting now for 3 days in total. I'm just going to break it open there and you can really see how it has been fermenting. Lots of air bubbles in there. A beautiful sweet crabapple aroma off it. At this stage, we're going to remove 100 grams of the starter. This can be composted nicely. So I'm just going to remove 100 grams of starter and put it in the compost. We're removing the 100 grams because we will be using, again, a third starter, a third flour, and a third water. And we only want to keep 50 grams of our starter, so as not to be building up too much starter unnecessarily. and thus wasting our flour. And of course, it's going back into our compost. So all these nutrients we're going back into our soil. Yeah. So we have here 50 grams of our starch, which has been, as I say, fermenting for 3 days. Just going to tare that. And we're going to add to this, again, 50 grams of our organic rye flour. And another 50 grams of the water. And this is refreshing all those wild yeasts and bacteria that have been building up over the 3 days. And it's really starting to get going now. So as I said, just mix it all together with your fingers. And this is adding like more food to the wild yeasts and bacteria that are in there, but it's also introducing more of the ones that are already on the flour. So it's building up and building up that we have more in there. And it's really going to start going now. And we're just going to repeat this process identically tomorrow again. After we've left it in our hot press again for 24 hours, we'll take it out. We're going to take out the 100 grams, put them in our compost, and build it up again with 50 grams of the starter, 50 grams of the water, and 50 grams of the flour. And then put it back in our hot press until day 6, where we'll then start building it up so we have enough to be making our common loaf at the end of 7 days. Here we are, day 6 of building our sourdough starter. It's been fermenting nicely now for 5 days. Again, we have that lovely crabapple aroma. And if we break this open, we can see all that lovely air that's been growing inside it. So we can see that fermentation is really going on. We're not going to discard any today. We're just going to keep the whole of this 150 grams, and we're going to build it up to 450 grams. So we're going to add to it 150 grams of our wholemeal rye flour. A little bit more of that. This stuff really ferments well. And into this, we're going to add, again, another 150 grams of our water. So we have 450 grams of starter altogether. And again, using your fingers and making sure you get right into the corners. As you build it up, you'll get bits sticking to the side. As I said before, it's quite important that all the flour is moistened. Now, let's clean our fingers, pop your lid on. I'm going to put that back in the hot press for another 24 hours when we'll be ready to go and make our common loaf. Here we are on day 7 of building our sourdough starter. We have 450 grams of the starter. Again, with a lovely crabapple flavour. And we can see here there is loads of activity going on. We have enough starter here to use 300 of it in our common loaf. And that'll give us 150, which we'll put back into our fridge to refresh for next time we want to use it. Or at this stage, if you're not ready to make your loaf, you can just put it straight into your fridge, but remembering to refresh it 12 hours before you want to bake your bread. This sourdough starter can be used for making many other breads. We can use it for making 100% rye sourdough, or as I say, a whole world of different sourdough breads. So, enjoy using your sourdough starter.